Multiple devices එකවර connect කළ හැකි internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber. Multiple devices එකවර connect කළ හැකි internet like a boss. SLT Mobitel Fiber.
In your headlines tonight, bailout talks continue. Visiting IMF mission team assures assistance to Sri Lanka in compliance with the IMF policies. How can we help? High-level delegation from the US government expected in Sri Lanka. Sri Lankan envoy to the US briefs President Joe Biden on crisis situation. Indefinite delay. Sri Lanka will not receive expected fuel shipments this week as shipments delayed without confirmation. Amending limits. The new amount of foreign currency in possession by an individual in Sri Lanka reduced. All this and much more coming up tonight on First at 9, this Saturday, the 25th of June, 2022.
Tomex Fellam sa විසබීජ අවම කර දින 3ක් දක්වා ටොයිලට් එක ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ව තමයි Tomex.
From AdaDerana, this is AdaDerana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
And a warm welcome. You're joining us on the English news service of AdaDerana 24. I'm Indivari Amuata. The visiting delegation of the International Monetary Fund to Sri Lanka are in their 6th day of bailout talks with Sri Lankan authorities. During a meeting with President Gotabaya Rajapaksa, the visiting IMF mission team has assured that they will assist Sri Lanka during the current crisis situation in compliance with the global lenders' policies. The delegation visiting Colombo through June 30th will continue recent talks on what would be Sri Lanka's 17th IMF rescue program. An International Monetary Fund delegation that arrived in Sri Lanka on Monday for bailout talks with Sri Lankan authorities called on President Gotabaya Rajapaksa at the President's house in Colombo last evening. The IMF team briefed the Sri Lankan President on the progress of preliminary discussions held with the Prime Minister, the Ministry of Finance, the Central Bank and other economic authorities and experts with the expectation of reaching a staff-level agreement by the end of the month. The island's present situation was also evaluated during the meeting between the visiting IMF team and President Gotabaya. The mission has reaffirmed their commitment to support Sri Lanka at this difficult time in line with policies of the global lender. The President has expressed his gratitude to the IMF for support extended to Sri Lanka at this difficult time. The 10-member IMF delegation will remain in Sri Lanka until the 30th of June to further study policy issues relevant to reaching a staff-level agreement. The first in-person talks with the delegation commenced in Colombo on Monday when the visiting IMF team met with Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe along with the Central Bank Governor and other relevant officials to discuss matters pertaining to a bailout program as Sri Lanka battles the worst financial crisis since independence. A high-level delegation from the United States is expected to visit Sri Lanka tomorrow to explore the most effective ways in which the United States can support Sri Lanka to overcome the economic crisis. In a media communique today, the US Embassy in Colombo said that the US will continue to support Sri Lankans in the coming months as the country revives the economy, combats food insecurity, and promotes public health and education. A high-level delegation representing the US Department of the Treasury and the US Department of State is expected in the island tomorrow through June 29th to meet with a wide range of political representatives, economists and international organizations based in Colombo. The Colombo-based US mission said that in all their meetings, the delegation led by Robert Kaproff, Deputy Assistant Secretary of Treasury for Asia, and Ambassador Kelly Kaideling, Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for South and Central Asia, will explore the most effective ways for the US to support Sri Lankans in need, Sri Lankans working to resolve the current economic crisis, and Sri Lankans planning for a sustainable and inclusive economy for the future. Issuing a statement, the US Ambassador to Colombo, Julie Chang, said the visit underscores their ongoing commitment to the security and prosperity of the Sri Lankan people. Ambassador Chang went on to say that as Sri Lankans endure some of the greatest economic challenges in history, the US efforts to support economic growth and strengthen democratic institutions have never been more critical. Over the past 2 weeks, the US announced $120 million in new financing for Sri Lankan small and medium-sized businesses, a $27 million contribution to Sri Lanka's dairy industry, and $5.75 million in humanitarian assistance to help those hit hardest by the economic crisis. The US also confirmed $6 million in new grants to provide livelihood assistance to vulnerable populations and technical assistance on financial reform that will help stabilize the economy. Sri Lankan Ambassador to the United States Mahinda Samarasinghe has met US President Joe Biden and explained the current situation in the island nation. Now, the meeting took place between the two parties at the White House Oval Office. The ambassador has also hosted the US State Department and US Treasury delegation who will be visiting Sri Lanka tomorrow. Ambassador Samarasinghe said that those officials too were briefed on the challenges faced by Sri Lanka. Now, Sri Lanka tightened the foreign currency possession limit to $10,000 from $15,000 earlier, amid the worst currency crisis in the history of the central bank. Holders of foreign currency can deposit notes into a personal or business foreign currency account or sell to an authorized dealer and escape legal action. The central bank said that an amnesty period of 14 days, effective from the date of the order, that is the 16th of June, has been granted for persons in Sri Lanka or resident in Sri Lanka holding foreign currency notes above the limit of $10,000. With the intention of attracting more foreign currency in the hands of the public into the formal banking system, the Minister of Finance, Prime Minister Ranil Wickremesinghe, issued an order as per the Foreign Exchange Act No. 12 of 2017, reducing the amount of foreign currency retained in possession by a person in or resident in Sri Lanka from $15,000 to $10,000 or its equivalent in other foreign currencies. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka, which has granted an amnesty period of 14 working days effective from the date of the order, that is the 16th of June, will allow people to deposit foreign currency into a personal foreign currency account or into a business foreign currency account, or to sell to an authorized dealer such as a licensed commercial bank or the National Savings Bank. A central bank statement this morning said it has the right to initiate actions against persons who hold foreign currency in possession by violating the order at the end of the said amnesty period in terms of the provisions of the Foreign Exchange Act. The central bank has taken various measures to uplift dollar reserves in the country to fund essential imports as Sri Lanka faces a dearth of sufficient forex. The financial regulator, along with the Ministry of Foreign Employment and Labour, continually called on the migrant worker community to remit their income to Sri Lanka through official channels to help ease the pressure on the national coffers. And we'll return with more news after this short break. Do stay with us.
Big 3.
Now we talk about the limit to foreign currency possession in Sri Lanka during this critical period. Apart from measures taken by authorities to restore normalcy and procure dollars needed to buy essentials such as fuel, medicine and food, two export sectors, the Joint Apparel Association Forum and the Sri Lanka Association of Manufacturers and Exporters of Rubber Products, these two associations that brings in over $6.5 billion annually through the two industries have taken steps to provide the government with the much needed foreign currency, US dollars, by cashing in the export proceeds ahead of the legal requirement of 1 month and 7 days and before the needs of the companies itself. Now, to discuss this and the future exports of the export sector during this crisis and the measures taken by leading firms, we've invited to our studios the Director General of the Sri Lanka Association of Manufacturers and Exporters of Rubber Products, Mr. Rohan Masakorala, who's joining us virtually now. Thank you very much for your time here, joining us virtually. What do you think of this measure, Mr. Masakorala? Can you explain to us the benefits of this measure briefly?
Thank you very much, Indiveri, for inviting me. As you know, the country is facing a very serious foreign exchange crisis, and we need about between $500 to $650 million, according to central bank, monthly, the essentials that you mentioned. So in the legal terms, there is a way of surrendering export bills monthly, because exporters also need some of their key dollars to bring in raw material, pay freight, and pay dollar loans back into the system. So they need to keep a percentage of their export proceeds within themselves and then release the balance to the commercial banking system on the 7th day of the next month. So this is the current gazette governing the conversions of exports. But these months we have seen the government is getting into very tight corner in terms of releasing ships that have arrived in the country because they don't have adequate currency in the central bank or the banking system to release these ships. So at this point, specifically, the apparel sector, along with the rubber sector, which I represent, have been constantly contacted by government to instantaneously request big export companies to release their dollar holdings.
How many companies, Mr. Masakorala, have come on board with this measure?
Well, if you look at the Joint Apparel Association Forum, there are 25 to 30 very big companies. In the rubber sector, there are about 5 to 6 very big companies. So in these companies who have been coming forward through the request of the government to release their dollars into either to the central bank or either to Vitrogas or either to CPC directly on the requirements and the guidance given by the finance ministry. These dollar bills or monies they have been having in their accounts are given to government to release this cargo. Otherwise, demurrage and other problems also drop in, and the normal life of the public gets severely affected. So we are doing our best while we are processing our export orders, and we need dollars to import raw materials, etc. as well. So whatever we can at a given time, our members have been coming forward actually for the last 2 to 2.5 months or more, surrendering bills. So actually, we were happy that the government had recognized this new sector.
Has there been any success so far seen as a result? Have you seen any success after this initiative was launched?
Yeah, very many ships. Probably nobody knows in public or even in media. It was never made a big show, but companies have been giving that money, 10, 15, $20 million at a time. Sometimes for gas, it's 3 to 5, $10 million to release shipments. If we did not give this money, government would have been in trouble, and the supply chain would have got further delayed, and even the fuel levels we have today would have probably got further delayed. So yes.
And very quickly, what are the primary concerns that the export sector is faced with at this time, and how is the export sector, the organizations in the export industry, export business, handling the challenges of the crisis?
Yeah, it is in fact extremely challenging, because energy and power is like lifeline of the country as well as the export industry. So it is important for us to have these two elements to make sure that our export orders are processed, because in our case, rubber industry, we have had continuous orders coming in, and there has been no problem in terms of having orders. But in fact, we can get more orders, but which we are not taking right now because of the country situation. I understand certain industries like apparel, there is a drop in orders due to country risk being assessed by the buyers. So the next months, the order books are slightly lower than what was expected to be. But overall, still the export industry is hanging in there, and we probably will reach the targets we had last year of $12.5 billion. If the energy and the power situation and the political stability continues and without work stoppage, I'm sure we can maintain those levels and our dollars definitely come through the banking system. Whereas we do know that there is a problem in when we worker remittances goes 50% out of the banking system, which
Right.
really doesn't help at this time.
Before we let you go, I'd like to also touch on the maritime and shipping industry. We are talking about a dearth in foreign exchange as we try to finance our essentials for the country, but can't the industry, the maritime and shipping industry, play a bigger role to support the foreign currency situation in Sri Lanka?
Yeah, so this is one of the areas that comes under what is called services exports. Now, what we're talking about is merchandise exports, which is accountable and traceable. But unfortunately, I realized that the services exports doesn't have a formal mechanism of tracing and tracking payments, commissions received, etc. So we've had a discussion with central bank to see and talk to these organizations, including the ports, terminals, shipping agents, IT sector, various other sectors who are considered non-merchandise but services sector needs to be tracked, and if they also can help the country at this moment by instantly supporting the immediate requirements, that would help the poorest of the poor of this country. That is how we look at from our industries together, that we have to come together, and we are in constant dialogue with the finance ministry and the central bank, trying to support them and also discourage illegal methods of doing business, which is really harming this country. And it will take a longer time for us to get out of this mess if we don't have formal mechanisms adapted, whether we like it or not. Criticism is easy at this moment, but I think criticism is not going to solve problems. We have to engage the existing policy framework and policy authorities to try and help this country out of this mess. Otherwise, we are all going to be in trouble. That is what we see.
On that note, what immediate steps would you like the government to take at this juncture, maybe going forward, to fix what you see as challenges for the export industry, to go out there and bring us more dollars?
Yeah, so the first thing I think we must understand, we are working with the international community and we need the support of the international community, the confidence of our buyers of the country. So for that, we need a couple of things. That is that we need to definitely have political stability. In April, we had a press conference from all the export sectors and told all the political parties and authorities that number one is we need to have a national strategy and a national plan with consensus with all political parties to drive forward. Otherwise, without political stability, nobody is going to give their dollars, other countries, taxpayers' money to another country who cannot account for them or come up with how we are going to get out of this current situation. So that stability and direction and plan is needed very fast for us, even to get the IMF support and the bridging finance. Everybody is looking at what we are doing and whether we are stable. So these are important criteria for every one of us as citizens as well as industrialists to move forward and get out of this problem at this moment. So we call upon government and all the heads of the political parties and of course the president to be rational and practical and come up with a mechanism of absolute political stability within a very short period.
Right. Thank you very much for joining us virtually. We had with us Mr. Rohan Masakorala, Director General of the Sri Lanka Association of Manufacturers and Exporters of Rubber Products. Sri Lanka will not receive expected fuel shipments this week, and the people are urged to refrain from queuing up as limited stocks will be distributed to limited fuel stations, with public transportation, health services, power generation and industries prioritised for fuel supply. Minister of Energy Kanchana Wijayasekara said that a shipment of 40,000 metric tons of petrol, which was expected on Thursday, will be further delayed due to banking and logistics reasons. Amid this situation, queues continue to be seen near fueling stations, with incidents of violence reported at a number of locations. Distribution of petrol from the Kolonnawa terminal of the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation was halted as fuel stocks at the storage have been exhausted. According to a CPC spokesperson, issuance of both 92 and 95 octane petrol varieties was stopped from the Kolonava storage terminal, with diesel stocks only being issued to fuel tankers for distribution. Amid this situation, Sri Lanka was expecting a 40,000 metric ton shipment of 92 octane petrol yesterday, which was originally expected to arrive at the Colombo port on Thursday, the 23rd of June. In a tweet last evening, Minister of Power and Energy Kanchana Wijesekara, however, said that the Ceylon Petroleum Corporation has been informed of a further delay to the shipment. Today, the minister tweeted that the supplier had communicated their inability to fulfill the deliveries of petrol, diesel and crude shipments on time due to banking and logistics reasons. The subject minister said that until the next shipments are at port and unloaded, public transport, power generation and industries will be prioritized for fuel supply. Limited stocks of diesel and petrol will be distributed to limited stations throughout next week, while the public are requested not to line up for fuel. Minister Wijesekara went on to say that the CPC is unable to confirm arrival dates of the shipments given the new developments. He also said that refinery operations at Sapukaskanda will be temporarily closed until the next crude shipment arrives. Although repeated calls were made to the public not to queue up at filling stations, people are seen waiting in line in queues for hours and at times for more than a day, with the expectation of filling their vehicle fuel tanks. In this backdrop, several incidents of violence were also reported from fuel queues in certain areas across the country. In Vellavaya last night, 4 people were injured and hospitalized following a clash at a filling station. According to reports, an argument among several individuals waiting in line had escalated when one of them attacked another with a knife. Following the incident, the injured were rushed to the Vellavaya base hospital. One of them, critically injured, was later transferred to the Monaragala district hospital. Vellavaya police have initiated investigations in search of the perpetrator, who is believed to have fled the area. In the meantime, hoarded fuel stocks were uncovered from several areas in the country during raids carried out by law enforcement authorities. In Jaffna, a 27-year-old was nabbed by the Special Task Force with 630 litres of diesel in his possession. In Martale district, a special raid by Consumer Affairs Authority to inspect filling stations in the district uncovered 1,400 litres of petrol and 1,600 litres of diesel hoarded by filling stations in the Ukuela area. In Hatton, meanwhile, a protest was carried out by area residents demanding kerosene oil. As a result, vehicular movement on the Hatton-Colombo main road was disrupted. The demonstration was staged by a group of at least 2,000 people who were waiting in a queue to obtain kerosene this morning. The protesters allege that kerosene stocks were not supplied to the Hatton area since the 9th of June. Now, schools in cities and suburbs which remain closed this week to function as per usual on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday next week. According to a statement issued by the Ministry of Education, primary sections of these schools will function at the discretion of respective principals. Meanwhile, schools where students, teachers and principals are not affected by transportation issues are instructed to continue in-person lessons. However, if any teacher is faced with transportation issues, principals are allowed to make a flexible timetable for them. Now, the Ministry of Trade announced today that permission has been granted to import 10 essential food items through open accounts with effect from the 1st of July. The essential items include rice, wheat, flour, white sugar, red dal, milk powder and big onions. Potatoes, dried chilies, dried sprat and watana dal were also allowed to be imported to the country via open accounts. From the 20th of May, the Ministry of Finance restricted the use of open account payment terms or consignment account terms when importing goods to Sri Lanka. However, the Central Bank of Sri Lanka assured the availability of foreign exchange through the banking system for the importation of essential food items. In the meantime, the Consumer Affairs Authority has published a Gazette Extraordinary prohibiting the sale or use of rice or paddy for animal feed production. Accordingly, no importer manufacturer, trader or distributor is allowed to import, sell, export or expose and offer for sale, store, transport, distribute, buy or purchase any rice or paddy directly from the manufacturer of animal feed or otherwise as an ingredient for the manufacturing of animal feed. Taking you very quickly to business news, the Sri Lankan ambassador to China, Dr. Palitha Kohona, says that China has assured to facilitate increased imports from Sri Lanka with more space for products including Ceylon tea, garments and coconut-based products in order to assist Sri Lanka overcome the foreign exchange crisis. Speaking during a webinar, Dr. Kohona said that Sri Lankan businesses are expected to take the opportunity to increase exports to China and explore more ways to diversify supply to the Chinese market. The United Nations office in China and the Sri Lankan embassy in Beijing jointly launched a webinar themed UN-China-Sri Lanka Triangular Cooperation on Trade and Investment Facilitation Empowerment to assist businesses in understanding the preferences of the Chinese market and standards adhered in a bid to effectively expand their presence in China. Speaking during the webinar, Sri Lankan ambassador to China, Dr. Palitha Kohona, stated that China has assured to facilitate increased imports from Sri Lanka to assist Sri Lanka overcome the current foreign exchange crisis. He also said that market space will be increased for products being exported to China, such as Ceylon tea, garments, coconut products, biscuits, seafood and gemstones, adding that there is potential for other new Sri Lankan exports to enter the Chinese market. Ambassador Dr. Kohona encouraged Sri Lankan exporters to grab the opportunity and to explore options to diversify products and increase quality exports to the lucrative Chinese market. Also speaking during the webinar, Chairman of the Sri Lanka Export Development Board, Suresh Demel, emphasized on the need to explore opportunities to enter the Chinese market to overcome the current economic situation. Now, Sri Lanka Cricket today announced the 18-member squad for the upcoming two-match Test series with visiting Australia. The Test series with Australia begins on Wednesday at the Galle International Cricket Stadium, with the first Test dedicated to the late cricketing legend Shane Warne. Captained by Dimuth Karunaratne, the team will comprise Pathum Nissanka, Oshada Fernando, Angelo Matthews, Kusal Mendes, Dhananjay De Silva, Kamindu Mendes, Niroshan Dikwella, Dinesh Chandimal, Ramesh Mendes, Chamika Karunaratne, Kasun Rajitha, Vishwa Fernando, Asitha Fernando, Dilshan Madhushankar, Praveen Jayavikrama, Lasit Amuldenia and Jeffrey Vandersay. Dunit Vellalage and Lakshita Rasanjana are named as standby players. The first match of the Test series will be played under the ICC World Test Championship. The first match of the Test series will be played under the ICC World Test Championship and will commence on the 29th of June at the Galle International Cricket Stadium. Earlier this month, the Tourism Ministry and Sri Lanka Cricket announced a decision to dedicate the first Test between the hosts and the visitors to cricket legend Shane Warne. Australia's Warne passed away in March this year, much to the shock and grief of the entire cricketing world. Cricket Australia has confirmed that Warne's wife and family members are expected to attend the Warne Memorial Test match in Galle. Well, that wraps up tonight's edition of First at 9. Thank you for watching AdaDerana English. Have a pleasant evening. Good night.